y'all, it's Hope at Crafty Hope and welcome. Today I am participating in the SJ Design Jewelry Honeydew List, and this is the picture that's the inspiration for January 2022. And I looked around in my stash and I just happened to stumble upon this dried hydrangea flower that was from my garden, and it was perfect because not only is it dried flowers, but it looks like a butterfly, and both of those things are in that inspiration photo. Now, it hit me that I wanted to do some UV resin with it to really kind of highlight the beauty of it. So I didn't want anything like a bezel or anything like that to really obscure that beautiful little butterfly flower thing. So what I'm going to use is some copper wire and make my own little frame to put the resin in. Now, I've never done this before with the UV resin, so this was a total experiment and it absolutely worked out. So I'm glad I turned on the camera to share this with you. But what I did is I pulled out my wire, and I've got a thing on how to I organize my wire. But I took the largest size of copper wire I had in there, which was an 18 gauge. Now I think anything from a 16 to 20 would probably work for this. 20 would be really on the low end. You want something kind of thick and heavy. And I'm going to create a frame. Now I'm just wrapping this around a Liquitex acrylic ink bottle, but anything that is big enough and sturdy enough. I thought a like a glue stick container would work or something like that, but an acrylic paint bottle would not work to wrap around because it has too much give to it. So once I got it wrapped around, I pointed the short side up, you can see there, and then the long tail, I am wrapping around that tail that's sticking up. I'm basically creating a wrapped loop here. I have a tutorial on wrap loops, but basically, like I said, you're taking that long tail and wrapping it around that one that's sticking up. Now I'm going to use some chain news pliers throughout this to kind of tighten things up and get it moved where I want it. But for the most part, I'm using my fingers. This is big enough and thick enough that you can manipulate it with your hands. So see how I'm squeezing that down, and I do get my pliers in there a little, and then I'm using some pretty heavy duty what are they, wire snips to cut that, and then I'll use my chain nose pliers again to flatten down that little edge that's kind of poking up. I don't want anything poking up on this. So I've got that made, and I am coming in. I'm going to grab, oh, first I'm going to make a loop at the top of that. So that shorter tail I've bent over. I'm trimming that with my wire cutters, and then I'm going to pull in some round nose pliers and make a quick, simple loop. And that's it. I have got a pretty little frame. I could use that and just have some earrings or whatever if I wanted, but no, we're going to use it as a frame for some resin. So before I get into the resin part, what I want to do is flatten my wire a little. So I'm just using a bench block and a hammer. This is just a little tiny hammer. I could have used a chasing hammer, or even a regular hardware store hammer would have worked fine, just to kind of flatten down both sides of that. I real quick tested and made sure my butterfly flower did fit in there, and it did. So I'm moving on and grabbed some packing tape. Now this is what's going to prevent our resin from seeping through. So I am making sure that is adhered really well on that flat side. That's why we flattened that out, was to make sure that that tape would stick on there really well. And once that's all stuck and good, I've got my UV resin. So I'm squirting that into my frame. I kind of started in the center and I'm pushing it outward. And I've got just a super cheap plastic craft brush. This is one that you can get at the dollar store for just nothing. It's something that I don't care if I mess up and I can throw it away. And so I'm just going to add resin as I need it. I want to coat that whole bottom and make a nice hard base layer to put my dried flower on. So I'm pushing that all the way to the edges. I want to make sure this resin is coating the entire thing. But I don't want to put it in there too thick because I don't want to fill up this whole frame already. I just want it super, super thin. So I'm being really careful on this first layer to make sure it's in there. And I'm putting on this paper so you can see. And y'all, don't be like me. I should have folded in those sides of this tape so I had something to hold on to that wasn't holding on to me because I kept sticking. So I've got a UV lamp there that I am going to turn on and put that in. If you don't have a UV lamp, you can also put this in a bright spot of sunshine. It may take just a little bit longer. You just need some UV rays. It only takes about 30 seconds to a minute or two to cure that resin. So this is why I really love the UV resin. So I tested that with my finger, made sure it was nice and hard, and then I grabbed my dried flour and I'm putting down another little dollop of the resin. It's going, here's where I'm folding down the edge so that tape will stop sticking to me. But I'm going to use this resin as a glue. So I'm putting that down a little bit and I'm going to put my dried flour there right on top. And I'm going to futz with this for a while. I'm going to use the back of my paintbrush there to gently kind of move the flour around because I don't want to get that resin on my fingers. Because I was sitting by a window and I really just didn't want resin to cure on my fingers. So I got that on there. I think I started to put some more resin down, but I decided what I needed to do was really make sure that I had my dried flour in there well because it wasn't level and I wanted to get kind of everything down so that it was stuck really well. So I've got it in there and I've decided I'm going to go ahead and stick it back in my lamp, turn my lamp on for another minute, and then when it's done, I'm going to pull it out. And that dried flour is stuck on there. So now I'm going to do this whole process of adding layers and layers and building up these layers on top of this flour to create this pendant. So this is just a lot of me putting the resin in there and moving around with my paintbrush. Again, that flower wasn't really level, so I'm trying to make sure I get resin up underneath some of the petals of it. And because I don't want bubbles in there, I want this to be as crisp and clear as possible. It is going to have some bubbles, like a little bit of bubbling in the end, you'll see, but that's okay. It kind of gives it a vintage aged feel. And I'm using antiqued, patinaed copper wire, so that's fine for it to feel a little aged. So I'm taking my time getting all of that resin on there, and I'm going to stick this baby back in my lamp. First, I'm going to turn that other edge down so it's a little bit easier to handle. All right, again, another minute, and then I'm going to pull it out, and I think I'm going to testing it with my finger. Yep, it's nice and hard. And now I'm going to add some layers. Added layers and layers. I don't even know, probably another 3 layers at least to get that exactly how I wanted on the front. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull the tape off the back. I'm being really careful about this because I don't want to pop that whole resin piece out of my wire frame. So I took my time with that, and there is a little bit of sticky residue, but I'm not going to mess with any of that because I know that adding that resin to the back is really going to help some of that smooth out and disappear. So I'm going to do the same thing. I am coating the resin on the back of the pendant, moving that around with my paintbrush and with a little bit of gravity. I'm picking that up and letting it kind of fall into place. And then because I don't need it on the tape anymore, I just throw that in there for another minute. And I did this over and over again. I did another 2 or 3 layers here. You see, adding another one. And this just kind of helped build it up. And again, I'm just doing it to my preference. So just like that, you see that it's beautiful. It is done. I was so, so happy. I am happy with how this pendant came together. But I want to turn it into a necklace now. So I have grabbed some beads. These are some garnet beads, some tiny little garnet beads that I felt matched that flower perfectly. But because they're so tiny, I want to test out my wire first. A lot of time gemstone beads, the holes in them are cut super small, and I often work with 22 gauge wire, which is sometimes too thick for gemstone beads. So I'm going to test it real quick. And this 22 gauge does fit on the garnets, but I'm realizing it's a little clunkier than I want. I wanted this to feel super delicate and feminine and dainty. So I'm going to go for my 24 gauge wire. So I am pulling that out. And then I grabbed some, what did I grab? I grabbed some jump rings for to attach the clasp and a clasp. So here are my jump rings, which look like I got on clearance at Hobby Lobby, and then a little clasp. So these are my things, and I'm going to take those. I'm going to go sit down for a little bit, and just like magic, oh, I have a necklace. Look at that, y'all. I absolutely love how this came together. I want to thank Sarah Jo and Eric for the inspiration from the Honeydew List to create this, and I will have links to them as well as my own blog post about this. If y'all have any questions about using the UV resin or anything I didn't say in this video, don't hesitate to ask. Make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more from me. And thanks for watching, y'all. Bye.